मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा तत्त्ववित्तु महाभागो तत्त्ववित्तु महाभागो तत्त्ववित्तु महाभागो तत्त्ववित्तु महाभागो गुणकर्मा विभागया गुणकर्मा विभागया गुणकर्मा विभागया गुणकर्मा विभागया गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते इति मत्वा स सज्जते इति मत्वा न सज्जते इति मत्वा न सज्जते इति मत्वा न सज्जते Someone would like to recite this verse?
तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो
तत्त्ववित्तु महाबाहो
गुणकर्म विभागया
गुणकर्म विभागया
गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते
गुणगुणेषु वर्तन्ते
इति मत्वा न सज्जते
इति मत्वा न सज्जते This is too big. Oh, actually, I think it got off. Wire. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Whenever there is a problem, we take shelter of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram.
It's connected to this.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram.
This doesn't connect to anything?
No.
No,
This one not connected with this.
Oh.
Hare Ram.
Not open now.
Can no, it's not.
Oh, the TV is not getting power.
Okay, press that. No, it's not just one.
The kid is walking, Daddy.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I will read the translation for you. The verse we recited. Tattvavittu mahabhavo guna karma vibhagaya guna guneshu vartante iti matvana satyate. So the translation is, one who is in knowledge of absolute truth, O mighty arm, does not engage himself in senses and the sense gratification, knowing well the difference between the work in devotion and work for the fruit of work. What is it? This is technology distraction.
Hey, hey.
You want to read Bhagavad Gita and say something else.
Could not come. Which Wi-Fi?
The purport. The knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in material association. He knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. He knows his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme, who is eternal bliss and knowledge. And he realizes that somehow or the other he is entrapped in the material conception of life. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows the absolute truth in three different features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Tattvavit. For he knows also his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. So we'll read the translation again now since it's visible. Translation. Yeah, someone can just read this.
One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, almighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results.
So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a very wonderful book. Everyone has something. Any page you open it and you read it, there is such profound knowledge actually in Bhagavad Gita that it makes our wisdom go more deeper and deeper. Every time you open it, every time you read it, it's like that. Shankaracharya has quoted this very beautiful verse glorifying Bhagavad Gita. Ekam Shastra Devaki Putram Gitam. Eko Deva Devaki Putra Eva. Eka Mantra Tasya Namami Yasi Janani. Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So in this verse he is quoting that in this world let there be one scripture, that is the Bhagavad Gita. He is quoting that let there be one God be worshipped all over the world. Understanding? Who is that?
Mommy.
Krishna. Mommy. It's Krishna.
Mommy.
Let there be one prayer chanting of the holy name, and that is the holy name of the Lord Krishna. And let there be one work, that is seva to the Supreme Lord, be the work for all living entities. So this is what Shankaracharya is quoting. It's like he's glorifying the Bhagavad Gita in a very wonderful way. So today we are reading from the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, entitled Karma Yoga. It's a very beautiful, interesting chapter. So we'll just look forward for the flow of this chapter. How does it flow? What exactly is happening in this chapter? Initially first chapter, what has happened in first chapter? Anyone remembers?
We described the scenes of the
Yeah, I described the scene of the Kurukshetra battle, and Arjuna is quite confused. He wants to give up the battle, and then he puts a lot of questions to Krishna. And this is what is the scene of the first chapter. And in the second chapter, Krishna takes it that I need to clear the confusion of Arjuna. And there he starts glorifying the nature of the soul. And then he describes in he describes the complete Gita in the second chapter. And he describes the nature of the soul, the relationship of the soul with the Supreme Lord. Then he describes the nature of the soul with the nature, with the material nature around. And then he describes the activities, karma yoga he describes in very few shlokas. Then he speaks about the jnana yoga, and then he speaks about bhakti yoga and encourages Arjuna that he should start fighting again. And then while speaking, he speaks about at the end of the third chapter, he speaks about that you should be very peaceful at the way you should be detached also, as well as you should be attached to you should be doing your duty, but you should not be attached to the result. And there gets Arjuna, and you should be very peaceful. So Arjuna is quite confused in the battlefield. How can one be in that state? To act, to fight in that battlefield, and to still go and win. So he did in this chapter. What he is telling is, Arjuna starts questioning. Basically in Arjuna's mind there is this question: should I fight or not fight? When this chapter is starting. So should I renounce the world, go to the forest, practice Jnana Yoga as is what described in the second chapter? And then Krishna tells that Arjuna that you stay in this world and practice Karma Yoga. And then but Krishna tells that in the Karma Yoga more better than Karma Yoga is Jnana Yoga. And then Arjuna is more confused now in the yoga ladder that I should perform Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga, which is better. And then Arjuna is again asking, if I'm not a qualified Karma Yogi, what should I do? Then Krishna is explaining this section. What we are reading is the difference between Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda. What a person exactly does in Karma Yoga, and how he is detached to the result what he is performing, and what a person does when he is not knowing what exactly he is doing. It's like he is a Karma Kanda. He is just doing anything and everything. So this shloka, what we are reading, is very, very beautiful shloka. Can we go to the shloka? Yeah. Tattva. There is this word Tattvavit, and Srila Prabhupada very nicely explains down. Well, yes.
Can you explain what is Karma Kanda?
Karma Kanda. Okay. Yeah, that's what we are going to discuss in this shloka, which is we are discussing Karma Kanda and Karma Yoga will be at the end. You'll be really clear what is Karma Kanda and Karma Yoga. So what happens is Prabhupada is very nicely explaining that one who is the knower of the absolute truth. Absolute truth. Who is absolute truth? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the absolute truth, and one who knows in three features. What are the three features? What are described in the purport? If you have heard very nicely, with lot of distraction, what was happening around. If you have heard these three words, then we will see who is Tattvavit. Anyone can tell?
The Supreme Personality.
Yeah.
That was the third.
Yeah, third. That was the third. Yes. There are two more. No, not you all. You all know everything.
Brahman, Paramatma.
You just knew that thing, or you heard?
I know, I remember.
Okay, Brahman, Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead. So if one knows these three features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is called Tattvavit. And everyone is looking forward for this absolute knowledge. Know that the Supreme Lord, who is Brahman. What is Brahman? Brahman is nothing but the effulgence coming out of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. When he is in Golok Vrindavan, the effulgence coming out of his body is such strong effulgence that it's causing a very it causes a Brahman actually. No one can see that thing, but the effulgence what comes out is Brahman. And people want to go in that and get liberated, stay in that so that they get liberation in this thing, out of this material world. So this is one who knows this thing. Can you come down to this thing purport? Yeah, this purport is very wonderful. This is so in the purport everyone he knows that the knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in this material association. What is the position of a soul, or what is the position of a living entity in this material world? First of all, who are we? We are this body, or we are spirit soul?
Spirit soul.
Spirit soul. Everyone is convinced?
Okay.
Please be little enthusiastic.
Yes.
Convinced? Yes. Okay. So we are spirit soul, and we are, and then what Prabhupada is telling is that the position should not be, he knows his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme, who is eternal bliss and knowledge. So Atma has these three natures, Sat, Chit, Ananda. And in the pure state of the existence is meant to dovetail in his devotional service to Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. When a soul is very, very pure, or he comes to the pure state. So now what happens, we are there with Krishna at one time at one time we were with Krishna. But we had that very strong desire to always seeing that Krishna is only enjoying with everything. Everyone is serving around, whoever is there around Krishna. Everyone is just serving Krishna. All the gopis are serving, Mother Yashoda is serving, Nanda Maharaj is serving. In fact, we were there, we were also serving Krishna. But at one time, we had this small desire that why don't I also enjoy like Krishna? And this is where the difference comes, that that the soul wanted to be different, away from the God, away from the Supreme Lord Krishna. And this is where Krishna thinks that that soul has a desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. So, in Golok Vrindavan, everyone is serving Krishna, and if you want to enjoy separately, it's very difficult for that desire to get fulfilled. So, for that own purpose, Krishna creates this material world actually. And in this material world, he sends that living entity so that he can fulfill this desire. That he wants to see what it means to enjoy separately from Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam describes this analogy very beautifully. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam, this analogy comes how rare is human form of life. Just imagine there is this big ocean which is flowing, Atlantic Ocean. And there are so many, aquatics they are there in the ocean. And there is this one small tortoise which is floating in the ocean, somewhere deep in the ocean. And that tortoise, it's not like, he automatically, he can live under the water for a long time. But he sometimes has to come up to get his air. And sometimes he just comes up, takes the air and then goes back down in the ocean. And what happens is there are a lot of wood which is floating around, lot of trees, lot of leaves and other garbage, whatever is floating around. And there is this one wood of log which is floating around. And in that one wood of log, there is this small hole which is there in the wood of log. And this tortoise which is floating around and is trying to get his air for breathing comes up on the surface of the ocean, and this log of wood is floating around. What is the chance that his head getting stuck in that hole? What is the chance? But still there are so many marine, so many aquatics. It's very, very rare actually. Very rare, you can calculate, we can give this task to you, you can scientifically calculate, what is the probability that the tortoise, getting, the small tortoise getting his head stuck in that hole. So Srimad Bhagavatam tells this analogy and tells that it is so rare that the rarity of the happening that is very, very rare. So that is how a soul gets the human form of life. This is how it's explaining that we are getting this human form of life. It's so very rare actually. We don't understand how rare it is. We have got this gem of thing with us, but we don't understand the value what we have got. But the problem what comes is like I've heard from my when I was visiting a sweet shop, and I was purchasing the sweet. So that owner of the sweet shop, he gave me an option. I want to adopt you. I was a small kid, so I was speaking very sweetly that time. So he told, I want to adopt you. I can give you sweets every day. And I told, yeah, it's very nice. My father told, yeah, he's very nice. You can take him. And I told, what are you speaking? I don't want to be here, with an unknown person. And then he told, I can give you sweets every day. And then I asked, just, yeah, I was small boy. I asked, how many times you eat sweets? I asked him, आप कितने बार खाते sweets? आप बताइए. So he goes, I hardly eat sweets anytime. It's like, weekly once or twice, sometimes he eats sweets. Because, those who are living in the sweet shop, they are not accustomed to eating sweet. They are like, that's it, you cannot eat so much sweet. That's like familiarity is there. Once you are familiar with something, you eat just rice, dal, sabji, rice, dal, sabji, rice, dal, sabji, and then this is like you want something else like pizza, or you want something like pav bhaji or pani puri or something like that. We look forward for that thing. We want some variety actually. So we get familiar with one thing, then what happens is we lose that taste. Same thing happens with us also. We have got this body, human form of life, but the problem is we become so familiar, like looking around that everyone has got human form. This person is in human form of life. This person is also in human form of life. And Bhagavatam is saying, or the scriptures are saying that how it is very, very rare. What it is rare? I see everywhere everyone has got human form of life, but we don't understand after how many births we have got this human form of life. It's very, very rare. It's like after going through 8.4 million species of life, we have got this opportunity. So that is what is been described here in this purport, that one in the pure state exists, that he understands that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And then what is in his pure state of existence is dovetails his devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He therefore engages himself in the activity, and it's very, very rare to get this human form of life, and it's very rare to get the Sangha of devotees. It's very, very rare. You can just imagine, how many people are there in New York? How many people are there? Huh? 8 million people. And how many are getting a chance to hear about Krishna? Hardly very few. Very few.
That also depends upon what religion you're born into.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. What religion you are born to, or who is speaking so much about God nowadays. Everyone is speaking about what is happening around with Donald Trump or John Biden only. Everyone speaks that only. Or what crime is happening next door, that is the talk. Or what sports, now it's IPL going on, right? Everyone is speaking about which team, RCB wins or CSK wins. Everyone is speaking about those things. Who is speaking about Krishna? No one is speaking about Krishna, right? So that it's very rare, very rare to get this association of devotees or to hear about Krishna. And one who gets this chance to hear about Krishna is very, very rare. And then what happens is, once you understand what he is supposed to do, that is mentioned in this verse. In a pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So he knows his material condition of life, and he knows that he is under the control of the Supreme Lord. So this is also very wonderful understanding, this sentence. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his, come down actually. Yeah. In the he knows that his material condition of life under the supreme control of the Lord, consequently, is not disturbed by all kinds of material reaction, which is considered to be the mercy of the Lord. So it's very, very important to understand whatever is happening around with us. If one becomes a devotee of Lord, he understands that whatever is happening around us with me is nothing but the mercy of the Supreme Lord. That we get an opportunity to come here to hear Bhagavad Gita class, or we get an opportunity to chant the holy name, or we get a very nice job. That is, everything is happening by the mercy of the Supreme Lord actually. For any activity to take place, there are five things which are very, very important. What are those 5 things? It's described in Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse number 13 and 14. In that verse, it is described that the 5 things for what are very, very important for taking any activity. I'll just read the verse for you once. Can you open that verse? 18 chapter. 13 and 14.
18, 13, 14.
Yeah. Okay, can you just go to translation? O mighty Arjuna, according to Vedanta, there are 5 causes of the accomplishment of action. Now learn from 14. Okay, here it says the place of action, the body, the person who is performing, and the performer, that is the soul. We have got this body, the soul, and the various senses, different types of senses what we have got, through which we have performed the activity, and there are different kinds of endeavor what we do. But the most important thing is ultimately the super soul. It is the mercy of the Supreme Lord that by which the activity takes place. So without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, there is no activity which can take place actually. So he understands that we might be doing anything. That's what is being told in our purpose. You can come into our purpose. That the Supreme Lord is in the full control of the living entity. That's how all our lives are being controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are the one who desires everything. We want to do anything. What happens is a living entity desires. But if he has sufficient good active karma, then he gets that opportunity to fulfill that desire. If he doesn't have that desire, if he doesn't have the karma, if he doesn't have that sufficient karma that his desire is fulfilled, then then that desire is not fulfilled. So in this verse it has been described that who is Tattvavid? Tattvavid is one who knows that everything, whatever has been so the desires, once the desires are fulfilled, then I'm just lost my flow actually. What we were there at the point. He knows that his material condition is under the control of Supreme Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by any kind of material reaction. So if there is any type of material reaction what is happening around, he is not disturbed. Why he is not disturbed? Because he knows what is happening is by the flow of the Lord's mercy. So, and then whatever which is considered by the mercy of the Lord. And this is very, very important to understand that without the mercy of the Lord, it's not possible for us to understand these things. Okay, so in this verse, we'll go to the next verse now. This is,
Yeah.
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 Prakatir. So this verse concludes that one who is a karma kan, who is not who, what happens, a person who is renounced. Now in this verse we come to know what exactly a person who is in knowledge about the Supreme Lord does, and a person without knowledge does. We had discussed about Tattvavet, who is Tattvavet, but now what happens to the person who is having that knowledge of Tattvavet, who is having the knowledge of Supreme Lord, and how he acts and what he doesn't act. So we recite this verse. Prakatir guna sammudha.
Prakrite guna samudha.
Prakatir guna sammudha.
Prakrite guna samudha.
Sajjate guna karmashu.
Sajjante guna karmashu.
Sajjante guna karmashu.
Sajjante guna karmashu.
Tan akrishta vidho mandan.
Tan akrishta vidho mandan.
Tan akrishta vidho mandan.
Tan akrishta vidho mandan.
Krishna vinanam vilchate.
Krishna vinanam vilchate.
Krishnan vilanam vilchate.
Krishna vinanam vilchate.
Can anyone recite this one verse? Prakatir guna samudha. Sajjante guna karmashu. Tan akrishta vidho mandan. Krishna vinanam vilchate. Okay, can someone read the translation?
Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge.
Okay. Bewildered by the modes of material nature. And a person who is bewildered, able to hear? Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engages themselves in material activities. So a person who is bewildered, he doesn't understand who is Tattvavid. He is bewildered and he acts, he is engaged in all material activities, not understanding what he is supposed to do. And he becomes attached to these activities. This is what happens to a living entity. That he gets here, comes in this material world, and then somehow gets carried away or gets attached to his activities, what he is doing. And it's very, very difficult for him to understand what is exactly the right thing to be done and wrong thing, what he is doing is right or wrong. So this is where what is required, but the wise should not unsettle them. This is something Krishna is telling, that the wise person should not unsettle them. And although these duties are inferior to the performer, lack of the knowledge, because of the lack of knowledge, it's not that we should not go and disturb it. But Srila Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport at the end. We'll just read the purport. It's very, very beautiful. Can we read the purport? Someone can read this?
Persons who are unknowledgeable falsely identify with material designation. The body is a gift of the material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called Maya or a lazy person, without understanding of spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as friendship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similar materially benevolent work. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being.
So what is Prabhupada telling in this purport? It's like something different than what is Krishna telling in the translation, or he's telling that one should not disturb a person who is so this is very wonderful. If a person is in knowledge, he's expected to set an example for this thing, for renunciation. But most of the people are not qualified to follow such example of renunciation. And if a person is attached person renounces the worldly responsibilities, what will happen if a person is unmaturely gives up the responsibilities of his life? Then what happened? He will eventually try to fulfill all the desires by irresponsible means. That is why Krishna is warning that if you go and make a person do something not according to his nature, then what happens is he prematurely if he takes if he if he renounces anything, then what happens is he'll try to satisfy his desires in a very irresponsible way. So one who realizes the futility of material activity should not encourage the masses to give up the work prematurely. Instead, he should encourage them to work by his example, and engaging in prescribed process of purification slowly but surely brings one to the genuine self-realization. But premature renunciation simply makes a social parasite actually. If, yeah, correct. If we just without knowing, without having a knowledge of what we are doing, and if we just want to give up and renounce, then it becomes like a he becomes like a social parasite. It's just like he considers to be a waste of time. But Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport to this, and then he tells who is a manda or a lazy person. A lazy person is one who is too attached to the bodily consciousness without understanding the spirit soul. He is a manda actually. And outside world, if we see, everyone is trying to just forget what is his nature. They're trying to get so many different designations. I'm 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 this first designation we get is our name. you know as soon as we take birth, we get a name, and that's how you identify with yourself every time. And then you get my family, my friends. That is one more designation which gets, we get a surname also with that. And then we get one more designation of being a coming in a proper religion, right? We get that religion, that like we have this religion of being a Hindu, or we get then identification of being an Indian. So all these things nothing are but bodily designations what a soul is getting. And because one gets these bodily designations, then what happens is he accepts the bodily connections with other kingsmen and the land of birth as the object of worship. And then he engages in social work, nationalism or altruism, and that's how he ends up doing a lot of things without understanding what exactly he's supposed to do. But but the thing is but the thing is very very important to understand here is, how does a devotee act? A devotee acts in the last paragraph it's told, but a devotee knows the heart of the Lord. Though the Lord is telling that oh law, that we should not go and disturb such personalities who are like who are manda, or like who are just ignorant of what they are doing. They think their body to be a self, and they identify with gross material consciousness. They are fully of material designations, and then they accept the bodily connections with others as their own, and then they worship the land which they are taking birth in, and they consider the religion rituals to be end all. That is the end. Whatever I am doing is the best thing. And then engage in social work, or do some social welfare activities, or do some selfless service actually, some service to any society or anything like that. And that's how his spiritual realizations is not at all interested in understanding the spiritual realization. This is what is a common people. If you go outside, the common thing what goes on with the people is this thing. Either they are caught up in all these 8 things what I have told. What Prabhupada is telling is exactly the what happens to a person who is living outside. Either he is just considered, he starts fulfilling all his bodily demands. That is how his time is gone most of the time. And then second thing goes is with fulfilling the responsibilities or with his family members or relation, or with different things what responsibilities he has taken. And third thing is he has got a lot of designations. So all his designations he keeps adding one after another, and he identifies with that designations, not understanding what is his real nature. That is where the problem comes. There's no problem in getting more and more designations, but one should identify what is his real nature. If one that is what Bhagavad Gita teaches, that if one cannot understand the nature what we are, and we want to understand all different things, we want to keep on adding more and more designations. I want to become a lawyer, I want to become an engineer, I want to get in this company, I want to work in this company, or I want to travel around the different places, and then put it on my profile that I've traveled so many places, I've done so many things, I've worked in Navy, I've worked in as an engineer, I've worked as a doctor, everything. I'm just telling what all people desire and what all people keep doing. This is where, and then if nothing is there, then it comes to worshipping the land which we are there. Either we identify with the birthplace and then we want to do something good for the birthplace, or else we just identify with different religions and then we just want to do some religious activities. And then or else what we do is we either want to go and do some social welfare activities. This is where, if you consider really, a person is engaged in either of one of the activities, but the most important activity what he is not engaged is knowing about himself. This is where the devotee comes in picture. That's what Prabhupada is telling at the end of the purport, that consequently, but the devotee of the Lord are more kind than the Lord, because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Lord is very merciful, he's giving this knowledge, but the devotee wants to help the person who is bewildered in this material world, suffering like anything, not knowing exactly what his nature is, what his connection with the Lord is. Then he comes and he gives this knowledge to that person. That's why a devotee becomes very, very dear to the Lord. He's just fulfilling the desire of the Lord. He knows the heart of the Lord and he fulfills the desire of the Lord in this connection. And he takes, consequently they undertake all kinds of risk, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the act of Krishna consciousness. So I just want to speak about a very beautiful pastime what I have heard about His Holiness Bhakti Tirth Swami Maharaj. Bhakti Tirth Maharaj, he was a sannyasi, and he was doing this book distribution, the Bhagavad Gita distribution, and he was doing it in Russia during 1980s, actually 70s. And during that time, it was not like the Hare Krishna movement was so well recognized. During that time, there was this KGP who was very, very against propagating any religion during that time. And it was like a communist, very strong communist country, and it did not want any religion to be propagated. But somehow, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj brought the Bhagavad Gita in Russia, and then he was going around distributing this Bhagavad Gita. So at one time, I just, what risk they take actually. If you are caught by a KGP, you are put in a jail, and they do all different activities, all different tortures to get exactly to know the location of the pure devotees where they are staying and everything like that. So many devotees were caught, and many things had happened in Russia also. But I can tell you what kind of risk he had taken. One time, he was just, they go and distribute, like they're just common people, they go and distribute, ask people around that, how are you, I've got some very interesting book, why don't are you interested in reading that thing? And then they take him aside and then they show him the Bhagavad Gita. And that too, the Bhagavad Gita is not the one we have, the printed one, properly printed. It was like a Xerox copy. Devotees used to print it in the they have a print they had a printing press, and they used to print the and they could not make it proper bounded book, but they were having all notes, and they used to staple it, and they used to go and sell these books actually. So it was like a very great risk. If KGP came to know about where we are printing and everything, people would have been caught, and they would have been his life would have been ended. He would have been in a prison for lifelong. But then at one time, he saw that a person, when he was speaking to one more guy, there was this another person who saw him, and he was started following actually. And Bhakti Tirth Maharaj, he could understand that the other person is KGP, and then he just started speaking and slowly started walking away from that person. And eventually, he happened to travel around. He started running. As soon as he came to a lane, he started running towards the lane, and this person started running again behind him. And it was like it was coming to a point that he was about to get caught only. And immediately he took some turns here and there, and he ended up going in a college. And then when the KGP came in the college, he was searching for him. He ended up in a professor's office, and somehow he just read the name of the professor. What was the name, you remember? you know huh? He ended reading the name, and then he told, I had an appointment with you. The professor told, I don't have any appointment right now, I'm busy with some. Oh, I already booked it with your secretary. And then and he not checked with the secretary was on the leave. So he told, why he not informed me that you were coming? Well, since I'm here now, we have an appointment, why don't we speak? And he started speaking about Bhagavad Gita and all the books of Srila Prabhupada. And he spoke for around 30 minutes. And this professor became so much interested that he took the standing order. The books which were not printed by Srila Prabhupada were taken as a standing order by this professor. And then he took one copy for himself, and he called one of his friend who was a librarian. He told, you come, I have a very interesting books about Vedic knowledge. Now, why don't you come and take these things? And then that professor, he called, and then he got two standing orders. He was trying to escape from KGP and ended up doing book distribution of 30 books. During that time, it's a very big thing to distribute these books. And that's how, somehow by Lord's mercy, he got saved that day. And then he came back to the temple, and he was telling this to the devotees. They were like thrills, like everyone was on thrill, how it's like very stunning the way how Lord's devotee takes so much risk to give this knowledge to these poor people around. And that is the risk Lord appreciates actually, when a person is taking that risk to give this knowledge to other living entities. That's why a preacher, when he's preaching about the Lord, he becomes very, very dear to the Lord. And that's what Prabhupada is telling, that these persons who are like engaged in all different material enjoyment things, and how can he come to this point of uh, uh, getting this knowledge is by a person, by a devotee who takes this risk to give this knowledge to these people. Yes, you wanted to share something? Yeah.
The devotee is more kind than the Lord.
Yeah.
Is that what they meant? Like how? I mean, it makes sense. They are kind, that they can be kinder than Lord.
Yeah, because they understand the nature of the Lord, that they understand why they are more kind than the Lord is, because they are giving the Lord to the other devotees, other people. The other people, they don't know what they are missing actually. And that's why when a person or when a devotee is giving the Lord to him, Lord to other person, then what happens is he becomes more dearer or more kinder than the Lord. Lord is there in the super soul, as super soul in everyone's heart. He's waiting, when will that living entity turn towards me actually. But he's not convincing him, or he's not telling directly. He's telling through consciousness. That you should not. That's why we understand, if you want to do any sinful activity, there is this always our conscious is there, that which obstruct us to do. That is the super soul which is always directing. But suppose, but a devotee is more kind actually, because he's directly going and telling about the Lord's knowledge to him. And that's why he becomes very, very more kind than the Lord actually, because he's giving this knowledge about the Lord to him. Yeah. So we have some discussion now. We can take some questions now. It's like 7:35 now.
Yeah,
Couple of minutes. So if you have some discussions or some questions, we can take this thing, or some reflections.
One shouldn't do social service.
It's not like one shouldn't do social service, but most important thing what one should do is more important. A person is drowning actually, and you want to go and help that person, get that person saving from drowning. So what you do is, you go to the ocean, swim to the ocean in a boat, and you go and pick up his try to pick him up, and then you just bring his packet and you tell that I have saved that person. Will that be sufficient?
But it
No, I'm just telling you, it's not sufficient that we just bring his jacket and then we tell that I have saved that person. Will that be sufficient? No, it's something similar like that only. Our social service is nothing but we are trying to save the body. We are trying to do anything which is related to body. A person who is suffering with cold, we may just go and give him a blanket. A person who is feeling hungry, we may just go and give him some food. But what is that? Why is he hungry? Why is he suffering in this material world? He doesn't know that why. What is the nature of his connection with the Lord? If we give the proper knowledge to him, that is the best service we can do. We don't tell that we should not do these things. It's like we can definitely take part in these activities. But what is the best thing a person should do is he should give him the best knowledge. It's a very simple thing. A person who is lost in this, lost his father. A father is a very rich man, but this son, he doesn't know how rich the person is, and he's just lost in some other city, and somehow that the connection between the father and the son, and you happen to meet the son who is just suffering on the streets, going across all different places. So what is the best thing you can do? You can just give him some 500 rupees and tell him that you be happy here. Will that be sufficient? No. That is like social service. But you give him the knowledge that who is his father. His father is a very rich man in that state. You give him the address. In fact, you take him, hold his hand, make him sit in the car and take him to that person. He will be very happy. He'll be most happy. Same thing we are doing with the living entity. A living entity is lost in this material world. But what is the best service we are doing is we are giving him the knowledge that who is his supreme lord, who is the supreme father. Krishna is the supreme father, and we are like the lost children in this material world. So if a person is able to give this knowledge to that person, that is the best social service in one way where one can do, rather than just feeding the hungry stomach. How long can we feed? We get hungry every 6 hours. you know we can distribute food. We can definitely do that, but the needs of a living entity are so unlimited. We have one desire after another, one desire after another, and we cannot fulfill all the desires of a person. But then we can purify that desires by giving this knowledge about Krishna to them. Is it okay?
I mean, it's you gave a hypothetical situation, but if I see a homeless person on the street, if I start giving him knowledge about Krishna rather than food, he'll slap me away.
No, that is correct. That's why when a person is homeless, we should understand the situation and then we should help that person. We cannot go and give this knowledge to a homeless person, because his need is not there. His need is food right now. He's on annamay kosh. He's just sitting on. He just wants to enjoy the food only. He's not on understanding what he is. Definitely we should give him food, but we should give him prasad. That is the best thing. We can just give him food. What will happen with the food is he will eat it and then he will get bounded by the food, because if it is not offered, if you just take a pizza from outside and give him, he get binded. But if you give him food which is offered to the Lord, then he gets more purified by that activity. So distribution of prasad is so very important actually. And then once he comes to the knowledge, he comes to a proper state, then we can give him this knowledge actually of understanding. Suppose chant now. Any one last question or realization, and then we'll end. We'll chant. Okay, 7:45 Prasadam queue will start. So we'll chant. The most important thing, how do we connect with the Lord is by chanting the holy name of the Lord. So it's very, very important. Now we were discussing about who is a devotee, who is a tattvavit. These things is described in Bhagavad Gita. But the most important thing, how we can realize all these things in this age, is by chanting the holy name of the Lord. And this chanting is very, very powerful method actually. One's mind which has been which is very, very contaminated, contaminated with lust, greed, anger, envy, pride and illusion. All these things are contaminating the mind, and this mantra, this maha mantra, removes all these contaminations. Once we take shelter of this maha mantra, then we all these contaminations are removed. That's why it's called mantra, which can deliver the mind actually. So for a living entity, the mind is one of the greatest thing what he is dealing with. Every time he is dealing with the mind. If the mind is very strong, what happens is he can become a very strong personality. But if the mind is very, very weak, and how to make that mind very strong is by doing the right thing at the right time, and repeatedly we do that thing. That is, practice is required. Krishna tells practice is required, and that practice can be done by chanting this mantra actually. So if the mantra is chanted, this Hare Krishna mantra, it can help for one to become very to deliver this mind from all these impurities. Should I take?
So
It's
just
all-
after chanting, we'll with the prasadam plate we can ask questions.
Okay. So now we'll chant this
Our
mantra.
concern is that you take prasadam.
Our concern, yeah.
So, huh?
Yes. So for online devotees, how do we do?
They can I don't know. So our Prabhu will lead us because we don't have so much time. We have like 3 minutes. So three.
Okay.
How many of you have chanted before? Or how many of you have not chanted before? You have not done chanting. Can raise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The rest everyone has chanted before. You know what chanting is? No, no. Apart from you. Okay.